Hello everyone, today we are looking at how a mere trading company transformed into ruler of a subcontinent. This is not just a story of commerce but of politics, diplomacy and military conquest, setting the stage for nearly 200 years of colonial rule. For exams, remember, this chapter connects directly to the causes of British expansion, the nature of colonial policies, and key words like Plassey, Buxar, Mysore, Marathas, and annexation. Let's see how British transformed from a trader to ruler. In 1600, East India Company came with a royal charter issued by Queen Elizabeth I, which was for exclusive trade rights in the East India. Now by the 1613, company sets up its first permanent factory in Surat, which was the mark of the start of direct commercial presence. Between the 1651 and 1700, more factories were established, like factories in Bengal, Madras and Bombay. Now the company started fortifying trading posts and it got territorial rights in some area. Now notice that all the factories are established near the coastal area. Like first factory which the British established was in the Surat, which is in Gujarat, and then in Bengal, then in around Chennai, which was also known as Madras back then, and in the Bombay area, which is Mumbai now. Now by the 1700, companies started to interfere in regional politics. It was because of disputes with local ruler. It was first started in Bengal. Now in 1757, interference in politics and the regional matter led to the Battle of Plassey. Now in this, company defeats Siraj-ud-Dowla due to the betrayal of one of the commanders, who was known as Mir Zafar. Now after this, British transformed from trader to a major political power. In 1764, Battle of Buxar happened. Now it was between East India Company and combined forces of Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II, Shujau-ud-Dowla and the deposed Nawab of Bengal, which was Mir Qasim. Now in this battle, British won. Now after this, company's control was solidified. They got control of Bengal and the neighboring states. Now in 1765, Treaty of Allahabad was signed, which granted the company Diwani rights. Diwani rights meaning they had the right to collect the revenue in Bengal, Bihar and Odisha, which was the official beginning of the territorial control. Now by the 1773, Regulating Act of 1773 appoints a Governor General, by which company's administration in India was formalized. Now in late 1700 and 1800, company expanded its territory using policies like subsidiary alliance. It confronted states like Mysore, Maratha and Sikhs. Now 1857, First War of Independence happened. Now the British called it Sepoy Mutiny. Now it shows the extent of company power and how it caused resentment among the Indian. Now by the 1858, company rule was ended. Now the British Crown took over the charge. It was the start of the British Raj. Now in 1600, Queen Elizabeth I granted the East India Company a charter for sole trading rights in Asia. Despite protection from English rivals, competition from the Portuguese, Dutch and French was fierce, leading to conflicts and fortification of trading posts. Gradually, trade led to political involvement, alliance with Indian ruler, military action and eventual territorial control. It was not like that British people only came to India. There were several powers which came to India. Several other European powers which I have mentioned here. Let's discuss it. Now there were Portuguese. Now they arrived in India in 1498 and the sea route was discovered by Vasco da Gama. Vasco da Gama was a Portuguese explorer who is best known for being the first European to reach India by sea. His voyages linked Europe and Asia through the ocean route, which had a huge impact on global trade and history. Now the Portuguese started settlement by 1510, mainly in Goa, Daman and Diu, Cochin. They were the first to arrive and they controlled the west coast. Now another one is Dutch. Dutch people came in India in between 1602 to 1605, and their main settlement was around Masulipattnam and Pulikat, which is in Tamil Nadu. Now they mainly focused on spices, trade, and they controlled Ceylon. Ceylon is the old colonial name for present-day Sri Lanka. And the next is English. English people came in 1600, as you know, by the charter issued by Elizabeth I. Now they established mainly around Surat, Madras, Bombay, and Calcutta. Now they set up East India Company and they defeated their rivals. Now French came around 1664. Their main settlement was around Pondicherry and Chandennagar, which is in West Bengal. Now they had a frequent wars with British and they lost main holdings. Now Danish people also came to India, but very little known is about them. They came around 1660. Now they mainly settled around Tranquebar, which is in Tamil Nadu. It was a small settlement and they did not cause any long-term influence. Although protected from English rivals, the East India Company faced fierce competition from other European powers, the Portuguese, Dutch, and French, who were already active in the Indian Ocean region. They all wanted valuable goods like cotton, silk, paper, spices, which led to rising prices and lower profit. To maintain their profits, these companies tried to eliminate their rivals, leading to fierce conflicts. They often attacked each other's ships, blockaded trade routes, and fortified their trading posts. Because of constant conflict, the need to protect their trade, these companies, including the British, got involved in Indian politics. They began making alliances with the Indian rulers, participating in local wars, and eventually controlling territories. The East India Company's transformation from a trader to a political power was driven by the need to defend its interest. This led to the militarization of trade, and over time, the British Company became the foundation of the British colonial rule in India. Now let's see how East India Company established power in the Bengal. Now the company first began in Bengal. It established its first factory on Hooghly in 1651, eventually acquiring rights for villages including Calcutta, which is Kolkata now. Now company traders misused privileges, causing loss of revenue to Bengal and angering local rulers. After Aurangzeb died, the Nawab of Bengal, Murshid Quli Khan, Alivardi Khan, and Sirajud-Dowla became more independent and started to challenge the growing power of East India Company. These Nawabs did not want to give the company special treatment. They demanded high payments for the company's right to trade and stopped them from making their own coins, and did not allow them to strengthen their forts. The Nawab also accused the company of cheating, saying it was not paying taxes and was disrespecting the Nawab's authority. On the other hand, the company felt that the Nawab's demands were unfair and made it hard for them to do business. The company argued that trade would only grow if they did not have to pay so much taxes. They also wanted to expand their settlement, buy more land, and build a stronger fort to protect their interest. Now these disagreements kept getting worse. The company's refusal to pay taxes and its action to build up its own power made the Nawabs angry. Things finally came to a head when Sirajud-Dowla attacked and captured the company's fort in Calcutta. In response, the company decided to fight back and even made secret deals with some of the Nawab's own men. Now this led to the Battle of Plassey. Now let's discuss Battle of Plassey. First, Nawab attacked the company's fort in Calcutta. I forgot to write here. Company's fort in Calcutta. Now they took British prisoners. But Clive, who led the company forces, he counterattacked, and the British won battle through the betrayal by the key Nawab commander, which was Mir Jafar. Now Sirajud-Dowla was defeated and replaced, and who he was replaced by, as it is obvious, Mir Jafar. Mir Jafar was the person who defeated the Sirajud-Dowla. He was the commander of the Sirajud-Dowla. So what is the significance of Battle of Plassey? It marked the beginning of British political power in Bengal. And now it secured company's dominance over Bengal's revenue. Now it was the foundation for territorial expansion in India. After this, British were a permanent force in India. subcontinent. Now the next was Battle of Buxar, which took place around 1764. Now what was the causes? So there were continued conflict between the company and the Indian ruler, mainly over revenue rights. Now so what happened was forces of Shah Alam II, Sirajuddaulah and Mir Qasim of Bengal, they fought against the company. But as you know, Battle of Buxar was also won by the company. Now company forces under Major Hector Munro defeated the combined armies. Now battle took place near the Buxar, which is in Bihar. So what is the significance? Now after this, British confirmed control over Bengal, Bihar and Odisha. Now Treaty of Allahabad granted company the Diwani rights, meaning revenue rights. Now this battle solidified the company's administrative rule in India. Now from 1757 to 1847, the East India Company expanded its territorial control over Indian states using a mix of political, economic and diplomatic strategies rather than relying on direct military conquest. After the Battle of Buxar in 1764, the company began appointing resident official agents in Indian courts. These residents influenced internal matters such as deciding succession to the throne and key administrative appointment, ensuring that Indian rulers acted in the company's interest. Now a major tool for expansion was the subsidiary alliance. Now it was a diplomatic strategy to control the Indian princely estate. It was introduced by Lord Wellesley, who was a Governor General from 1798 to 1805. So what happened was the British ruler had to accept British troops. They would be stationed in their territory for protection. After this, they have to pay for maintenance of these British troops, meaning British are stationing their troops, but the Indian ruler had to pay for their maintenance. Now, Indian ruler had to disband their own armies and they had to surrender control over foreign affairs. They could not form alliances with other power. They had to take permission from the British rulers, meaning the Indian ruler now had no power over their internal matters, over their foreign matters, and on top of that, they had to pay for the maintenance of British troops. So what was the significance? So the British also appointed a resident, which was the official agent in the court, who can oversee the administration and influence the decisions, meaning he was a type of spy for the British. Now if rulers failed to pay for the troops, part of their territory was annexed by the company. So what is the significance of this subsidiary alliance? Now because of this, British extended control without direct warfare. They did not have to fight for the territory. Now it weakened Indian ruler sovereignty. It gradually led to the annexation of several other Indian territory. Now which were the states which were mainly affected? First one was Nizam of Hyderabad. It was the first state to sign a subsidiary alliance in 1798. Then Nawab of Awadh. Then other princely states who were gradually compelled into similar arrangement. Now these methods allowed the company to gradually take control without open warfare, weakening Indian rulers and paving the way for further annexation and eventually British control. Normally the company expanded through diplomacy and subsidiary alliance, meaning indirect control, but in Mysore under Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan, the rulers were too strong and independent. Like they blocked British trade in sandalwood, pepper and cardamom. They allied with the French. They built a modernized army. Because such a powerful state could not be subdued by treaty, the company abandoned diplomacy and chose direct military confrontation. After that, 4 Anglo-Mysore War followed. Now in this, British were victorious in 1799, meaning Battle of Srirangapatnam, in which Tipu Sultan was killed. Only after victory did the company reimpose the subsidiary alliance on the weakened Wadiyar dynasty. Now with the Maratha, British had trouble, but after Panipat, Marathas weakened and split into states under chiefs like Scindias, Holkars, Gaikwad, Bhosle. These chiefs were loosely united under the Peshwa, who was the main leader based in Pune. The British saw them as the main obstacle and fought 3 wars. First was First Anglo-Maratha War, which was from 1775 to 1782. It ended with the Treaty of Salbai. In this, no clear winner was there. And the second war, which happened between 1803 to 1805, British gained Odisha, Agra and Delhi. In the third war, which was between 1870 to 1890, it was the final blow. The British defeated the Marathas completely, removed the Peshwas from the power and sent him to Bithur near the Kanpur with a pension. So the outcome was Maratha Confederacy ended. Company became undisputed ruler of the most of India, especially south of Vindhyas. Now let's see wars with the British war with the Mysore, Maratha and Sikhs. Now with the Mysore kingdom, British fought 4 times, had 4 wars, and between 1767 to 1799. Now outcome was 4th war ended with Tipu Sultan's death. Mysore lost independence and came under British rule. Now with the Maratha, they had 3 wars. Now in this, as I told you in the third one, Marathas were defeated. It led to the dissolution of Maratha Empire and British gained control over large territories. And with the Sikhs, British had 2 wars, mainly between 1845 to 49, and it was the end of Sikh Empire and Punjab was annexed to the British India. Now let's see what was the claim to paramountcy and what was the doctrine of lapse. So the policy of paramountcy was introduced by Lord Hastings. Let's see what is the claim to paramountcy. It was introduced by Lord Hastings. By this, company claimed supreme authority over Indian states above any local rulers. Now, what was the justification? That they could annex, interfere whenever British interests were at risk. Now, Rani Channamma of Kittur resisted, but she was captured and her follower Rayanna continued guerrilla attack until executed. British always dreaded the expansion of Russian army. It led to a prolonged war with Afghanistan between 1838 to 1842, and there they established indirect company rule. After this, Sindh was taken over. They annexed Sindh in 1843. Due to the presence of Maharaj Ranjit Singh, the company was held back. But after the death of Ranjit Singh, they fought 2 Anglo-Sikh war and Punjab was annexed in 1849. Now, this gave company a legal political excuse for continuous expansion, though it was often met with popular resistance. Now, let's see what was the doctrine of lapse. Now, it was introduced and applied by Lord Dalhousie mainly, who was Governor General from 1848 to 1856. Now, it was applied when a princely state rulers died without a natural male heir. The British refused to recognize adopted sons as legitimate successor, which directly challenged the long-standing Indian tradition of adopting heirs in the absence of natural son. Now, Lord Dalhousie aggressively applied it to annex several large and small states: Satara, Jaipur, Sambhalpur, Baghat, Udaipur, Jhansi, Nagpur, and Awadh. The doctrine of lapse was deeply resented by the Indian rulers and the nobility because it ignored their customs and undermined their authority. Many states lost their independence simply because they did not have a direct male heir. The policy caused widespread anger and resentment among Indian rulers and elites. Many saw it as a violation of sovereignty, tradition, and trust. Notably, Rani Lakshmibai of Jhansi became one of the most prominent leaders of the revolt of 1857, directly challenging the annexation of her state. The annexation of Awadh in particular was seen as especially humiliating and unjust. This policy, along with other aggressive expansionist measures, became a major cause of discontent and was one of the key factors that led to the revolt of 1857. After the 1857 revolt, the British abandoned the doctrine of lapse and began recognizing adopted heirs to stabilize relations with the princely state. Now let's see how British set up a new administration. When Warren Hastings became the first Governor General of India, the British East India Company had already gained control over large areas, including Bengal, Bombay, and Madras. To manage these territories, the company divided them into 3 main administrative regions called presidencies. Each presidency was governed by a British official called a governor, but the highest authority was the Governor General. Now, what changes in justice administration took place? They made several important changes to how the company ruled its Indian territories, especially in the area of justice. There were Faujdari Adalat, it handled criminal cases, Diwani Adalat, civil cases, and the Supreme Court was established by the Regulating Act of 1773. Now, British officials relied on Pandits for Hindu law and Maulvis or Qazis for Muslim law to interpret customs. In 1775, 11 Brahmin scholars compiled a digest of Hindu law translated into English by Nathaniel B. Halhed. Now, in 1778, a code of Muslim law compiled for the European judges. Now, judicial institute which were established was by Regulating Act in 1773. Supreme Court was established, and there was Sadar Nizamat Adalat. It was the higher criminal court of appeal. Now, most important British official in each district was called collector. Now, his main job was to collect taxes and revenue for the company. He was also responsible for maintaining law and order with the help of judges, police, and other officers. The company's office, known as the Collectorate, became the new center of power in the district, replacing the old local rulers and systems. Warren Hastings and the early British administrator introduced a new centralized system of governance in India. They set up a structured court system, tried to standardize law, and made the collector the main authority in each district. This system laid the foundation for British rule and replaced the traditional Indian system of administration and justice. Next is, let's see what were the reforms in the army. Now, when the British East India Company established its rule in India, it brought a new system of administration and reform. However, the real backbone of its power was its strong army. Now, let's see how the transition of army happened from Mughal to colonial army. Now, Mughal army was mainly dominated by cavalry, which was called Sawars. They also had infantry, who was Paidal soldiers. They were trained in swordmanship and archery. They relied heavily on local zamindar and armed peasant to provide foot soldiers. There was no large standing professional infantry. Now, by the 18th century, successor states like Awadh and Benares began to recruit peasants, giving them systematic military training. This laid the groundwork for Sepoy Army of the East India Company. The East India Company, initially established a trading enterprise, gradually became the de facto rulers of large part of India by the mid-19th century through several key factors. Now, starting as coastal trading post, the company extended its control through treaties, alliances, and military conquest. Its official used political strategy, wealth, and military force backed by a strong Sepoy army to bring many Indian states under their effective rule. Now, before the 1820, sea voyages between London and Bombay took 6 to 8 months, limiting personal flow. Now, the advent of steamships shortened the journey to about 3 weeks, enabling faster rotation of British administrators, soldiers, and settlers, thereby reinforcing the company's hold over India. Now, by 1857, the East India Company directly controlled roughly 2/3 of India's territory and population. The remaining Indian kingdom, though retaining nominal independence, had to comply with the company rules through subsidiary agreement. In 2 centuries, leveraging steam power and astute political strategy, the company transformed from a few trading factories to dominion over almost the entire Indian subcontinent. Now, while the East India Company was focused on expanding trade and power in India, other European companies like the Dutch East India Company (VOC) were establishing strategic trading posts globally, including at the Cape Colony, which is southern tip of Africa. In the 1600s, the Dutch East India Company, which was called VOC, it set up at the Cape as a supply station for ships trading with Asia. However, the Dutch settlers faced severe labor shortage for their farms and businesses. To solve this problem, the VOC and the settler began the slave trade by capturing people from parts of Africa and Asia and bringing them to the Cape under the harsh conditions. This slave labor system was integral to European colonial enterprises, enabling them to build economic foundation for their expanding overseas empire. Just as the East India Company relied on local system and military power to establish control in India. The story of slavery at the Cape highlights the dark side of European colonial expansion, reflecting exploitation beyond India and showing the interconnected nature of European imperialism. The eventual abolition of slavery in the Cape Colony in 1834 mirrors broader shift in colonial policy, including changes in British rule in India post 1857. So why this is important for aspirants? Now, understanding the slave trade contextually expand awareness of European colonial strategies in the Indian Ocean region, not limited to the Indian subcontinent. It shows how economic and labor exploitation was a backbone of colonial powers, helping explain their expanding control mechanism, including in India. This broader perspective is crucial for UPPSC and UPSC aspirant to appreciate the complex geopolitical environment in which the East India Company rose. Now let's start with the exercise. First one is let's recall. Match the following. Now Diwani was the right to collect land revenue. Next one is Tiger of Mysore, which is Tipu Sultan. Now third one is Faujdari Adalat. Now criminal courts were called Faujdari Adalat. Rani Channamma was who led an anti-British movement in Kittur. Now Sipahi or Sepoy as British called were soldier. Now the next is fill in the blanks. The British conquest of Bengal began with the Battle of Plassey. Next is Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultans were the ruler of Mysore. Now Dalhousie implemented the doctrine of lapse. Last is Maratha kingdom were located mainly in the western part of India. Now the next is state whether true or false. First is the Mughal Empire became stronger in the 18th century. It is a false statement as it weakened rapidly after Aurangzeb's death in 1707. Regional powers like Marathas, Sikhs, Nawabs rose. Now next is the English East India Company was the only European company that traded with India. Now it is also a false statement as other companies like Portuguese, Dutch, French, even Danish were also trading in India. Now see, Maharaja Ranjit Singh was the ruler of Punjab. It is a true statement. He founded the Sikh Empire with Lahore as capital in the early 19th century. Now the next is the British did not introduce administrative changes in the territories they conquered. It is a false statement. Now the next question is what attracted European trading companies to India? Now there were many things which attracted European trading companies to India. Like India was famous for cotton and silk textile which were in high demand in Europe. And the spices like pepper, cardamom, cloves, cinnamon were also highly valued in Europe. Other goods like indigo, salpetre, and later tea also attracted traders. Another reason could be Indian textile and spices fetched huge profit in European markets, and European industries had no substitute for many Indian products. Now, India itself was a large consumer base for European goods, like we purchase wool, metal, wine, etc. Now, decline of the Mughal Empire in the 18th century created political opportunities. Regional rulers often competed for European alliances, giving trading concessions. Now, India was also at the crossroad of the global trade. Now, the next question is what were the areas of conflict between the Bengal Nawabs and East India Company? Now, there are many areas of conflict between the Bengal Nawabs and East India Company. First one could be trade privileges, which were called dastaks. Now, company officials misused duty-free trade passes, causing huge loss of revenue to Bengal. Another one was revenue loss. Nawab wanted the company to pay taxes and duties, but the company resisted. Third is fortification. Company wanted to fortify its settlement, like in Calcutta, without Nawab's permission. Like they have a conflict over coinage and currency, dispute over the minting of coins and control of currency in Bengal. And Nawabs wanted sovereignty and control. Company tried to interfere in administration and politics. Now the next is, how did assumption of Diwani benefit the East India Company? Now due to the Diwani rights, British got the right to collect revenue from Bengal, Bihar and Orissa. Now company got direct control over land revenue. Now they generated huge income from revenue financed companies, trade and wars. Now they could buy Indian goods with Indian revenue instead of importing bullions from Britain. To the revenue control, it gave company administrative authority over vast territories. Now, in short, Diwani gave the company financial strength, trade advantage, and political power, which was the foundation of British rule in India. Now, the next is, explain the system of subsidiary alliance. Now, subsidiary alliance was introduced by Lord Wellesley, who was a Governor General in 1978. Now, the main features are, Indian ruler had to accept British troops in their territory and pay for their maintenance. The rulers could not keep their own independent army. The rulers could not make alliance or wage wars without British permission. In return, British promised to protect the state from external and internal threats. So what was the consequence? State lost their sovereignty and independence. The financial burden of maintaining British troops drained Indian rulers. And it provided the company with political control without direct annexation. For example, Hyderabad was taken by this method in 1798, Mysore in 1799, Awadh 1801, and later many other accepted it. The subsidiary alliance was a diplomatic tool that made Indian states dependent on British power and led to their gradual subjugation. And the next is, in what ways the administration of the company different from that of the Indian ruler? Now, in case of Indian rulers, authority was often personal. It was linked to king's will or tradition. Now, in case of company, authority was based on laws made in Britain and the Governor General followed orders of the Court of Director in London. Now, in case of law and justice, Indian rulers and justice based on custom, tradition, Sharia and Dharma Shastra. And in case of company, it introduced uniform laws and codes like civil and criminal codes and codified laws. Now, in case of revenue system, Indian rulers were collecting revenue in kind or cash, often flexible during famines. Now, in case of company, fixed land revenue settlement were introduced like Rayyatwadi, Mahalwadi. It was rigid and exploitative. Now, in case of army, Indian rulers' armies were often feudal with nobles or clan contributing troops, but in case of company, they maintained a professional standing army of sepoys, disciplined and European style. Now, the purpose of rule of Indian rulers was administration aimed at patronage, prestige, protection of people. And in case of company, administration primarily served economic interest of Britain, revenue extraction, trade profit. Now, the company administration was legalistic, centralized and profit-oriented, unlike the more customary and locally rooted rule of Indian kings. Now, the next is, describe the changes that occurred in the composition of the company's army. In the composition of the company's army are from mercenaries to sepoys. Early on, the company hired Indian soldiers casually for trade protection. Later, it built a regular army of Indian soldiers trained in European styles. Now, the command always remained with British officers while Indians formed the bulk of the army. Now, they introduced drills, uniform and modern firearms, and the soldiers were made to follow Western military discipline. Now, traditionally, Indian rulers relied heavily on cavalry. The company emphasized infantry armed with muskets and bayonets supported by artillery. Now, they initially recruited from areas like Bihar, Awadh, Bengal. After 1857 revolt, they shifted recruitment to Punjab, Gurkhas, Pathans, reducing reliance on North Indian Brahmins and Rajput. The company's army changed from a regional mercenary force into a disciplined European style infantry-based army under British control with selective recruitment after 1857. Now, in the next video, we will start with next chapter, that is chapter 3, ruling the countryside. Thank you.